What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is a physical media related video, which, as you can probably tell if you're new to the channel, I'm a pretty big physical media collector. I have over 500 movies on Blu-ray and 4K, as well as I do have some TV shows on Blu-ray and 4K. And then I do have some DVDs. Most of my DVDs, because I've been a physical media collector for over a decade, most of my DVDs I was actually able to upgrade to Blu-ray and in some cases also 4K thanks to my local record store, Amazon, eBay, and then other ways as well, which is awesome. However, there are certain movies that unfortunately just never got a Blu-ray release as of the filming of this video, or even a 4K release. And in some cases, which is even sadder to say, they didn't even get a DVD release. So this is me saying, hey, top 10 movies that I want on Blu-ray, studios, get on this, or at least give it to distributors where it's like, hey, they can then actually take the 35mm and then make it into a 2K scan or a 4K scan and release it on physical media so that we can all enjoy it. Because let's face it, physical media, it's amazing. It's a lot higher quality than streaming. Streaming, I get it. People want convenience, and that's okay for them. But for me, I want the highest quality possible. And I know what some of you are thinking, well, wait a minute. Why don't you do a top 10 movies that you want on 4K? I will. The reason why I'm not saying that these movies I want on 4K is because the odds of them actually coming out in 4K are really slim. I'll be happy enough if they get a Blu-ray release. And I will explain in some cases as to why I believe that personally. But I will also say this. I'm filming this video on June 17th of 2024. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I actually am refilming this video. And I'll explain. What happened was I originally filmed this video on June 5th of 2024. And I said, you know what, I'm going to set this up for, I think it was July 26th of 2024. I had it dated and everything, which was awesome. I was excited, very proud of the video. And then today happens, and I got an email from Criterion saying that, hey, here are the movies that are coming out on Blu-ray and 4K in September of 2024. And don't you know it, 2 of those films are films that were on my top 10 movies that I want on Blu-ray. And not only are they coming out on Blu-ray, they're coming out 4K, which is like amazing to say. But before I give it the honorable mentions and then my 10 to 1, I want to give you guys a little bit of background in terms of like these movies. So I'm going to show this clip of that video that I previously filmed on June 5th of 2024. And I'm glad that that video is now obsolete, honestly, because again, those were 2 movies that I wanted to get on 4K, and here we are. They're on 4K. So here we go. 2 more honorable mentions. The next one is All of Us Strangers. This was shot on 35mm and it was a 4K master format. So this is a film that's very frustrating in that, not that the film itself is frustrating. The film is great. It's the fact that it's a film that is on Hulu. And I believe it's Disney's gone on the record and saying that, yeah, we're not going to release it on physical media at all. That's outrageous. Why would you have it where it's like they're able to shoot on 35mm and you actually have a 4K scan and you're still like, you know what? No, we're actually not going to release that. Like that's frustrating. That's annoying. So I don't know. I hope that some kind of other distributors like, you know what? We'll take the rights and we'll actually produce it on physical media. So again, if we're lucky, we'll get a Blu-ray release. But as of right now, it looks like we're probably not, which is a shame because this is a great film. It was very sad. I was glad I saw it in theaters because it was a captivating experience. So highly recommend you check out All of Us Strangers. But yeah, I haven't rewatched it on Hulu because again, it's lesser quality. I want to see that physical copy. Come on, let's make it happen. Next up, my number 4. Let me pull this out. My number 4 is Happiness. Happiness, when I bought this on DVD years back, this DVD was worth $40. Don't know what it's worth now. Don't shoot me for it. But I got this at the record store for $2. If I didn't get this movie at the record store for $2, I would have been able to watch it. I can't find it on any streaming services, not even to pay for. This is a film that's very hard to find. And I get it. It's a film that's dealing with subject matter that's not easy to talk about. But this is also a film that I think is important to talk about. It is dealing with a lot of intriguing themes that at the same time, like, we do face in life, unfortunately. So it's one of those films that I feel like is a necessity to every film buff to watch. And that's why I'm saying that I do hope it gets a Blu-ray release down the line, especially because it is shot on 35mm. So I really do think that the colors will really pop in regards to this movie, in regards to a Blu-ray release. So fingers crossed, but yeah, Happiness is my number 4. But yeah, guys, I thought you would find those little snippets funny with how obsolete they are now. But I really am genuinely happy that Happiness And of course, All of Us Strangers are now part of the Criterion Collection. I can't wait that when they have the 50% off sale in November of 2024, I can't wait to pick both of those up because those will be early Christmas presents for myself. So I'm very much still looking forward to that. But going into this video itself, you clicked on the video so you know I'm doing top 10 movies that I want on Blu-ray. Keep in mind that this list is going to be subjective, meaning that your list is going to be different from mine, and that's what's great about film as an art form. It is subjective, and I am looking forward to seeing your list in the comment section down below. For me, I'm going to be giving 5 honorable mentions, and then I'll be going from 10 to 1, with 1 being the absolute necessity in terms of movies that I want on Blu-ray. So I'm excited to give you guys this list. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off with honorable mentions, we have The Village, which is a 2004 film directed by M. Night Shyamalan. This was a huge box office success. It was shot on 35mm, and I know what you're thinking. Turns 20 this year, so why on God's green earth would you be having this on this list? Because this is probably going to get a 4K release. I don't think so, for 2 reasons. 1, it is a Touchstone Pictures film. There is a company that was owned by Disney. So Disney is not really about physical media. So with Disney, if you get a Blu-ray release, you're lucky. 2, that leads me to the other reason. This is a 2K master format. And 2K master means that it is an HD master. Now, I'm getting all this information from IMDb, all these specs, so keep that in mind. But there's no way that Disney themselves are going to go back and actually rescan for 4K. They can because it is 35mm, but there's no way that they're going to do that. So if it does get a 4K release by Disney, it's probably just going to be an upscale. So you'll have the added addition of maybe HDR, but it's just going to be an upscale. So it's going to be like, at that point, I'll just get it on Blu-ray. So I'm saying this, maybe we'll get a 4K release in regards to maybe like a boutique label such as like Criterion or Kinolore will do it, but I don't see that happening. I really don't. Disney doesn't really do that much. So I don't really see it happening. Again, if we're lucky, we'll get a Blu-ray release, and that's why I have it as an honorable mention for The Village, which is a shame because it's only on DVD. And you're lucky every now and then you'll see it on streaming, but still, it's low bit rate because, again, it is streaming. Physical media is amazing. But yeah, so that's The Village. And then next up, we have a film that you probably haven't heard of because most people haven't. My next honorable mention is a film called Lucy. This is a 2019 film with Tim Roth, Naomi Watts, and it's a film that I saw in theaters and I absolutely loved, and I did see on streaming shortly after. And it was actually a film that I'm pretty sure it was one of my honorable mentions in terms of 2019 films. I loved it. I thought it was a great film, but nobody's really heard about this film. None of my friends have seen it. People I follow on Letterboxd, barely anybody's actually reviewed this film. So it's a film that seems to be under the radar, and it is a 35mm shot film, which is amazing. It looks great. I still remember seeing it in theaters. And then it is also a 4K master. So it's like they have it, but when they decided to release on physical media, they only released a DVD. So that means they are barely willing to release this on physical media because they don't think it's going to do that well because it didn't do well at the box office. So I think personally that maybe in the future we'll get a Blu-ray release if we're lucky, but I really don't see a 4K happening because there just really isn't an audience for this film, unfortunately. But again, I think this is a great film, and I think that if you've been sleeping on it, I would highly recommend it, and you'll see what I'm saying, how this film is ripe for a Blu-ray release. I hope it happens. That's why I have it, Lucy, as an honorable mention. Next time we'll mention, we have The Hours, which is a 2002 film. This is a film that's shot on 35mm, and not only is it shot on 35mm, it has an all-star cast. It got, I believe it was 10 Oscar nominations, including a win by Nicole Kidman, and it's a film that did well at the box office, so it hits all the check marks as to a movie that should get at least a Blu-ray release, but it hasn't. It hasn't yet. All we have is a DVD release of it, which blows my mind. It's been over 20 years. They had the possibility of, releasing a Blu-ray or a 4K for its 20-year anniversary in 2022. That didn't happen, though, so I don't know if we're ever going to get a Blu-ray release. I really don't. I hope so, though. That's just why I have this on the list, because I really do like this film, and I actually rewatched it a couple days ago. It holds up. It is a good film, but again, I want it to be on Blu-ray. I want that physical copy for this film because it's so good. So beautiful, too, and it sounds good, too. It's a really good film. Check it out if you haven't already. But yeah, that's the hours. Next up, we have How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which is a 2023 film. This actually made my top 10 films of 2023. I loved this film. I thought it was great. I don't really have any specs. Like for all these other films, I've given you specs in terms of like, 35 millimeter, and then, 2K or 4K masters. I can't really do that for this because on IMDb, the only thing I see is that I see 16 millimeter, but I don't know if that was like some segments that most of it was shot like, on digital cameras. I don't know, so I just want to be truthful with you guys. But I will say this. The film was a success in terms of critically speaking. Critics loved it. It did well in terms of like the Indie Awards, but it got shut out at the Oscars. Audiences didn't really show up for this film, and nobody seems to really be talking about this film. So that's why it only got a DVD release, meaning the studio is like, you know what, we barely trust that this film will make money back on DVD. So that's why they just don't have a Blu-ray release or even a 4K. So maybe in the future we'll get a Blu-ray release if we're lucky. If we do, I'll definitely pick it up on Blu-ray because I loved this film. That's why I have it as an honorable mention that I want on Blu-ray. And the last honorable mention, this is actually a film that I own on DVD. My last honorable mention is 3 Idiots. So this is the film that actually introduced me to Indian cinema. I love this film. I think it's great. The reason why I have it as Blu-ray and not 4K, because I know it is shot on 35 millimeter, is because 2 things. One, it is a 2K master format, meaning that it's only HD available. They would have to go back and they would have to rescan it for 4K. Don't see that happening because of reason number 2, this is an Indian cinema film. Meaning that Indian cinema just never really, unfortunately, makes it onto physical media in America. It's a shame. I hate saying that, other than DVD. So I just don't see it happening. Like even RRR, which was a huge box office smash, that still hasn't had a physical media release. So I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. But if it did, I would be very much so happy because it looks good on DVD, which is surprising to say. So I can only imagine on like Blu-ray what it would look like. So I loved this film. I would love to see it on Blu-ray. So fingers crossed. I don't think it's going to happen though. But yeah, those are the honorable mentions, guys. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Top 10. So to kick things off with top 10, my number 10 is a film called The Cook, The Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. This is a film that came out in 1989. It was shot on 35 millimeter, and it's a long title. And it's also a film that very few people seem to have heard about. I only heard about it in 2018 when Ari Aster actually did an interview where he said that this film was one of those films that he watched to influence him with directing Hereditary. And Hereditary was my favorite film in 2018. So, of course, I decided to check this film out. But here's the thing. The only way to check this film out in North America was illegal means. And that's what I'm saying. This is a film that when I saw, I loved it. It was hard to watch for sure, but it was one of those films that I was glad that I witnessed, but I also at the same time said, where's a Blu-ray release for this? And I'm still saying this 6 years later, where's a Blu-ray release? I could see potentially Criterion getting a hold of this at some point and, having potentially like a 2K master for it. That'd be pretty cool, but as of right now, again, it's shot on 35 millimeter, so there isn't any physical media release for this in terms of Blu-ray or 4K, which is a shame. So I'm hoping for a Blu-ray release pretty soon. But again, I do at the same time understand that we don't have one because it really isn't a film that studios probably look at as like a financial success. So it's like, hey, why would we do that? So I get it. I get it from a financial standpoint, but at the same time, I really do hope this film gets a physical media release, and that's why it's my number 10. Next up, at number 9, we have A Simple Plan. This is a film that came out in 1998, directed by Sam Raimi, and it is actually my favorite Sam Raimi film. I loved this film. It is a film that got 2 Oscar nominations when it came out, and it didn't do well at the box office, which is why I suspect it doesn't have a Blu-ray release at this point, but this is a film that's shot on 35 millimeter, so a Blu-ray release would be magnificent. As of right now, all we have is a DVD release of it, and that came out, I think it was like 20 years ago, so this film did turn 25 recently, so I was hoping that we would get a Blu-ray release because of that, but we didn't. So I'm hoping that maybe for the 30-year anniversary, we'll get a Blu-ray release. But fingers crossed, I really like this film, and I think it deserves at least, the very least, a Blu-ray release. And that's why I would ask my number 9. Next up, my number 8, we have Strange Days. This is a 1995 film directed by Catherine Bigelow, shot on 35 millimeter, and similar to Sam Raimi, these are 2 directors that I watched these films because I was trying to watch all their films to rank on my YouTube channel, and I'm glad that I do that for this very reason. I had never heard about Strange Days until I decided to watch all Catherine Bigelow's films. So I'm glad that I did that, because otherwise I wouldn't have seen how underrated this film is. Nobody talks about this film. It didn't do well at the box office. I think critically it did all right, but it's just one of those films nobody talks about. And I think that in terms of sci-fi, it is definitely up there as one of the best. It is really, really good. It's a fresh perspective. But here's the thing. Because it didn't do well financially, I think that's why we haven't gotten a Blu-ray release as of now. But I'm hoping that because there is slowly but surely a cult following for this film, I'm hoping maybe a boutique label will actually get a hold of the 35mm scan and then make it into a 2K scan. That would be pretty awesome. Or maybe a 4K scan and put it on a Blu-ray disc. Either way, it would be really cool to have a Blu-ray disc for this film. Because again, nobody seems to talk about this film. And yeah, that's why it was my number 8. Next up, my number 7, we have In the Bedroom. This is a film that came out in 2001, directed by Todd Field. It got, I believe it was 6 Oscar nominations. It did really well financially at the box office. So it's like, why doesn't this have a Blu-ray release? Especially, it was shot on 35mm. So it's like, all these things make me ask, why don't we have a Blu-ray release for it? And it boggles my mind, because this is a film that I'll see from time to time at my local record store, the DVD for this film, but I'll never pick it up because I'm always like, maybe we'll get a Blu-ray release. Maybe we'll get a Blu-ray release. So I'm continuing to say that. I hope it gets a Blu-ray release because I really like this film, and it should have a Blu-ray release at this point, especially because I'll see sometimes on streaming sites that there is an HD version of it. So come on, let's get our act together and let's actually get this on Blu-ray. But yeah, In the Bedroom, that's my number 7. Next up, my number 6, we have A Tale of Two Sisters. This is the 2003 South Korean film. And from what I read up, I don't know how accurate this is, but from what I read up, this film is historically the first South Korean film that actually made it to North American movie theaters. Don't know how true that is, but if so, it's like, that is monumental. Why don't we have a Blu-ray release of this film? Especially because it's shot on 35mm. It looks good. I did see it on streaming about 5 years ago, but I haven't seen it since because, again, it hops from streaming service to streaming service. So it doesn't really seem that there's a distributor for this. So I'm hoping that at some point, maybe someone like Criterion or Kino Lorem will get a hold of the 35mm print and then actually make it into like a 2K transfer. That'd be really cool. I think this film deserves it in North America to actually, get it so that way there's like a following, because this is a really, really good film. Nobody seems to talk about it, but it's one of my favorite ghost story movies. So if you like those type of movies, highly, highly recommend this film. So let's hope we get a Blu-ray release down the line. But yeah, Tale of Two Sisters, that is my number 6. And now, guys, we get to nitty-gritty top 5. So my number 5 is a film called Thank You for Smoking. It was shot on 35mm, and it was also shot on video. Now, the thing is, this film actually does have a master. It has a 2K master format, meaning that there's no 4K master format. And because of that, that's why I think that we'll only get a Blu-ray possibly in the future if we're lucky, because this film didn't do well financially. It was a critical success, and I think that there is a minor cult following to this film. So if we do get it in terms of other than a DVD, which there is a release for that, other than that, if we're lucky, we'll get a Blu-ray release and it will be a 2K master. If we were to somehow get a 4K, unless they rescan it, which I don't see that happening, it would just be simply an upscale. So that's why I'm saying that I think if we're lucky, we would get a Blu-ray release for this film. And we should. This is a great film. I loved watching this film 6 years ago. And I've been itching to rewatch it since. But again, no Blu-ray release as of filming this video yet, which is a shame. But yeah, Thank You for Smoking was my number 5. Next up, my number 4. This is going to be a odd choice, but let me explain. My number 4 is a film called Dogville. This is a Lars von Trier 2003 film. It was shot on video. And I know what you're thinking. Video, okay, so Chad, that's probably not going to look that good on Blu-ray. Here's the thing. Video can look good, and I do think Dogville is a film that, yes, it can look murky for sure, but I think that might also be because we've only seen a standard definition for this film. I personally haven't seen an HD version of this film. When I saw it, it was, again, an SD version. So I would love to see it where they actually, have like a master format where it's like, hey, we're, going to put it on 2K. I could see possibly Criterion Collection getting a hold of this because Antichrist is a film that made it into Criterion Collection, and that was also directed by Lars von Trier. So I personally wanted to because I know it's 3 hours long, and I know that it doesn't really have like a huge following. But I do think that if it's a part of the Criterion Collection, I think more people will come across it, and more people will see why it is my personal favorite Lars von Trier film. Again, he's a director that's not for everyone, but I do think if you're a fan of his work, this is a film that is a must-see, and what better way to experience it than on Criterion Collection Blu-ray. So, yeah. That's my number 4. Next up, at number 3, we have Little Children. This is a 2006 film, also directed by Todd Field, the director of In the Bedroom. And this is a weird one. And by that, I mean that this film is shot on 35 millimeter, and it actually does have a 4K master format. So it's like, if there is a 4K master format out there, why don't we have this out on actual 4K physical media at the very least? And I think the reason is, it didn't do well financially when it came out in 2006. So I think that if we were to be lucky and get a physical media release other than the DVD, which, yes, I do own 2 copies. I've explained in other videos why I have 2 copies. But this is a film that if we're lucky, we would get a 2K down. Well, they would have the 4K scan, and they would put it on a Blu-ray, so it would be, it would look really good. It just wouldn't have like HDR. But that's what I suspect. If we were to get something other than the DVD, I think it would be a Blu-ray release, just because they're probably going to look at the statistics and be like, well, who's actually going to buy it on 4K other than chat support? And the odds are probably not that many. So they're like, okay, well, let's test it out. We'll put it out on Blu-ray. If it does well on Blu-ray, then we'll actually, have it where it's like, hey, we're now going to release it on 4K. I could see that happening for this film, but I don't think it's also going to be like a huge seller on Blu-ray or 4K. But could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because, again, I do want it to be on the very least, at least Blu-ray. But yeah, Little Children, that's my number 3. Next up, my number 2, we have The Alamo, 2004. So this is a film that was shot on 35 millimeter, similar to Little Children, and this actually has a 2K master format. I used to own the DVD. I did sell it because I said to myself, it's probably going to get a Blu-ray release at some point, but it did turn 20 this year, and we still have yet to see a Blu-ray release for this. And I think the reason is because it didn't do well financially when it first came out. It also was a critical dud. So there's just it's a film that I feel like, if you're not a fan of history, if you're not like a history buff, I just feel like it's going to be a hard sell for mainstream audiences. And I think that that's why the studio also was like, you know what, we're not going to release it on Blu-ray. We'll just keep it at DVD, which is a shame, because I do actually own this on HD in terms of my Vudu, and it's streaming. So, of course, streaming is a lesser quality to Blu-ray. And I'm like, thinking in my mind, I'm like, this looks good on streaming. I can only imagine what it would look like on Blu-ray. But again, because it was a box office, critical dud, all those reasons, as well as that it is a Touchstone Pictures film, which again is owned by Disney. All these reasons are why I'm saying that if we're lucky, we'll get a Blu-ray release. But it's definitely something that I can't see happening. But who knows? I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we actually do get a Blu-ray release for this, because it's as you can tell, it's high up on my list for a reason. I like this film quite a bit. That's why it is my number 2. Next up, my number 1. This is the film that when I watched it recently, I said, you know what? Why don't we have a Blu-ray release for this already? My number 1 is Solaris, 2002 remake. This is directed by Steven Soderbergh. It is shot on 35 millimeter, and there is a DVD release for this film out there. And I understand from a financial standpoint why we don't have a Blu-ray release yet. It did okay-ish at the box office. Critically, it was, hit or miss for critics. So it's one of those films where it doesn't have a big following, especially because the original is so beloved, the original Solaris, I should say. But this is a film that I think is so underappreciated. It is a feast for the eyes. Visually, it was amazing. I have seen it on DVD, and I have seen it on streaming. And streaming, there was an HD version of it, and it looked even better. So this is one of those films that, because of just how visually and audio pleasing it is, I would love to at some point get this on Blu-ray. I'm not going to say 4K because, again, all those reasons I mentioned, I just don't see that happening. Blu-ray, maybe, slight possibility. I hope it happens. I really do. That's why I have it as my number 1. But yeah, guys, that is my top 10 movies that I personally want on Blu-ray. Let me know the top 10 movies that you want on Blu-ray. Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm very curious to see your list. And then also be on the lookout for top 10 movies that I want on 4K UHD. That video will be coming out soon. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Patreon, and also catch you guys later.